I've made a lot of guide videos here at Cole Red Plays Raid Shadow Legends, but there is one dungeon I have never created a guide for, and this despite repeated requests from viewers that I do so. Now, there's no particular reason why I skipped over this dungeon. Maybe I was never inspired, or there were other priorities or a lot of distractions in game and in life. But today I finally correct that oversight on my part by taking you into the Iron Twins Fortress. So like in all of my guide videos, I'm going to give you a thorough breakdown of this dungeon so you understand all of the mechanics that are in the fight. And then at the end, we will theory craft a team that can take on the Magic Affinity Iron Twins Fortress right here all the way up to stage 15. But hopefully the theory craft will help you design a team based on your roster for any of the affinities of the Iron Twins. I am Cole Red. This is Cole Red Plays Raid Shadow Legends. Let's get started. While I have you here, would you please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and consider joining our Discord community. And don't forget, my next Takeover Tuesday live stream goes up at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, February 18th. I hope to see you there. The first thing you should know about the Iron Twins Fortress is that the affinity rotates on the same schedule as the potion keeps. So as you can see, the Magic Keep is open today. Therefore, the Iron Twins Fortress is Magic Affinity. And that means that the Void Fortress will be open the same day as the Void Keep. That's on Sunday, so only 1 day a week. In order to fight a battle here in the Fortress, you need not only a key, but you also need energy. This is the only place in the game where that happens. It sucks. We hate it. We've told Plarium, and they haven't changed it and probably never will. Be aware that if you lose a battle here in the Iron Twins Fortress, you will lose the energy, but you will keep the key. There it is. Whatever. That's what it is. That's the reality of it. Now, as far as farming these stages, what I would say is the only stages worth farming are actually stages 14 and 15. So if you can't clear to 14 yet, don't farm this fortress. However, you will get one-time rewards every 3 stages. So at stages 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15, you get a one-time reward that can be valuable at any point in your account's progression. So you do want to occasionally get in here and see how far you can push just to pick up those rewards. But until you get to stage 14 or 15, you don't really want to farm it. It's just an inefficient place in terms of reward per energy. I will say this, though. If you're a free-to-play player, you want to farm every day. If you are a spender, you may only want to farm on Sundays. That's because the Void Keep actually drops twice as many rewards. And that's the day where if you're going to buy extra keys, you can buy extra keys for 150 gems. That's the day to buy extra keys. So on Sunday, you want to do 12 keys. Every other day, you want to do 6 keys or 0 keys, depending on if you're a free-to-play player or a spender. Now, this is the reverse of most advice I give in terms of other locations in the game. And this is because for spenders, if you want to avoid the fortress, you can, because you can always buy yourself soulstones. You can do it here in the shop, or you'll get limited special offers, which are going to give you better prices. But you can actually buy soulstones, and free-to-play players can't. And souls are incredibly powerful. So the best, most farmable, possibilities for getting souls come from the Iron Twins Fortress for free-to-play players. So you can get the coins that are going to allow you to buy the Mortal Soul Stones and the Immortal Soul Stones. And you can get these as rewards from events and tournaments, and you do want to focus on that. But the Iron Twins are the only place that free-to-play players can actually farm souls consistently. So be aware of that. And like I said, everybody, whether you're a spender or free-to-play, you want to get in here on Sunday and probably farm 12 keys worth of the fortress. Okay, so now we are in the fight. You can see I'm on stage 15. Just a quick note, every stage, the mechanics are exactly the same. There are no differences in the mechanics. The only differences are in the stats, and you can always check the stats for any given stage using the Raid Stages tool at hellhades.com. So I highly recommend you do that when you are theory crafting your team to make sure you have enough accuracy and enough speed to take down this fight. Now, in the boss guide, I'm going to go over this relatively thoroughly, but I'm also going to streamline it a little bit because it is a big wall of text. So taking a look at the A1, this places a lot of debuffs on you. It hits one target, places a whole bunch of debuffs. So you are going to want a cleanse and or a block debuffs buff. both work. You can block these. But in addition, you want to know that this will ignore unkillable buffs when the Iron Twins HP is equal to or less than 40%. So unkillable teams work, but this one ability will ignore unkillable. So they won't work forever. You can't have like an infinitely running unkillable team. They will eventually get killed off by the A1. So just be aware of that. I'm not going to be going over unkillable comps in today's video. I'm also not going to be going over Geomancer comps. Geomancer's reflect damage passive can help you take Iron Twins down, but you build the teams very differently than you do a traditional team. So I'm going to be focused on traditional builds as we progress into the theory crafting portion of the video. Now, the A2 is an AoE, and this is where we get introduced to the Iron Brand debuff. The debuff is unique to the Iron Twins Fortress. Basically, this is a counter. You'll get a lot of stacks of this Iron Brand debuff, and basically, the more stacks, the worse it is for your team, because the boss is going to hit harder. But there's a second effect here that we actually care about at least as much as the Iron Brand effect, and that is this growth effect. So every time this skill is used, and the A3 and the A4, the boss gets stronger. The A2 increases defense by 2.5%, plus an additional 1% for every enemy whose affinity does not match the Iron Twins. So if you bring in anybody but magic affinity champions to this fight for this particular affinity, this growth effect will be bigger. That doesn't mean you can't bring in other affinities. It just means you want to be careful about bringing in other affinities for long fights, right? The shorter the fight, the less it matters. The longer the fight, the more it matters. Now, the Iron Twins will stop using this skill when their HP drops below 40%. This is the A3, which is another AoE. It extends Iron Brands the same way as the A2, and it also has a growth effect on attack instead of defense. And same thing, it'll stop using this ability at 40% HP. Now, the Iron Twins have a fourth ability, Doomsday Machine. This is actually the scariest one. So it attacks all enemies 2 times, and then again does all the stuff with the Iron Brands and has a growth effect. But the big thing here is actually right in the middle. After the first 2 hits, attacks all enemies again. The damage inflicted to each enemy increases according to the number of turns remaining on each enemy's Iron Brand debuffs. So the more stacks you have on your Iron Brand, the harder this ability will hit. This hit also ignores 30% of each target's defense. So this is the ability, this is the attack that is most likely to wipe out your team. It's the Doomsday Machine. Now there is yet another attack or another ability. Okay, so Retaliatory Launch. This is a passive that's kind of like the Ice Golem passive. So at certain thresholds, when you hit that threshold, the Iron Twins get a special move. So first of all, they will remove all of their debuffs at 80%, 60%, and 40%, and then instantly attack all enemies. A couple of things to know about this. First of all, there's another part of this passive where the Iron Twins turn meter gets filled by 10% whenever you put a buff on your team. So if you put a buff on all 5 champions, that's 50% turn meter for the Iron Twins. It's a lot. So this is how the Iron Twins can get so many turns. And remember, when they cycle through their turns, they get those growth effects. Their defense goes up, their attack goes up, and they hit harder and harder. Plus, they're going to grow the stacks of Iron Brand faster the more turns they get. But you can prevent this by having a decreased speed debuff on the boss. That's incredibly important for this fight. You want decreased speed unless you're using a Geomancer strat. And again, that's a different video. So decreased speed is the most important debuff because that will prevent the turn meter fill. Plus, it'll actually reduce the number of turns they take. And it says right here, the Iron Twins are immune to turn meter reduction effects, so you can't push their turn meter back in any way. So this decreased speed is really, really important. It's the key to the whole thing. Now it says the Iron Twins receive 50% less damage from each subsequent hit from multi-hit skills. So the first hit does 100% damage, but then actually I'm not really sure if that's true. It might be 50% and then it's less. But anyway, multi-hits don't work as well. So big hits like, big nukes, max HP nukes are the best. So you want to think about champions like Coldheart. Newt would certainly work, but because his ability is multi-hitter, it'll do less damage each time. I'm not going to use Newt today, but just be aware that you primarily want to go with max HP nukes. Now, the boss is immune to all crowd controls and all sorts, block passive skills and all that stuff. And then max HP damage can't exceed 10% per hit. There's also another thing here, which isn't mentioned up here for whatever reason, but I think it's mentioned down here. Where is it? Yeah, Iron Twins also take reduced damage from HP burn debuffs. I don't know why, and I don't know how much, but what I've found is that HP burn still works fine. So be aware, it takes a little bit less damage, so the numbers might be different than you expect, but HP burn still does pretty good damage. And I don't think there's any reduction from poison or anything like that, so I don't think they're immune to poison. I don't typically use poison very much. Sometimes I bring in Mithrala, and she does do some poison damage, and I've never seen any kind of effect with that. So I think poison is fine, and I think HP burns are fine, even though you do a little bit less damage with HP burns. Okay, so that is the description of the fight. Now let's start theory crafting a team that hopefully can take down stage 15. Together a team here, the most important aspect of any team composition is the decrease speed debuff, because that's going to prevent the boss from getting extra turns. There's one exception to this rule, and that is a Geomancer-based team. So remember that Geomancer reflects damage back to the boss, and he does a lot of damage based on that reflection. So the more the boss is attacking, the more the boss is getting damaged by that reflection. So for Geomancer teams, you don't want to decrease speed, but for every other team, you do. And again, I'm not going to be going over those teams in depth today. We're just going to be focused on classic traditional team compositions. So we want to start with a decreased speed. So I'm going to come in here to the filter, going to choose all of my 6 stars, and I'm going to look for a decreased speed, except I don't want Spirit Affinity for this particular boss because I don't want any weak affinity debuffers because they might miss. So let's go for a debuff. We want the decreased speed. By the way, a lesser decreased speed still has the same effect, just doesn't slow down the boss as much, but you could certainly use the 15% decreased speed if you want. We're going to go for the big one. Now, as you can see, I have several options here. I think one nice free-to-play option is Vizix. Another one is your Carl. Both of these are Void Affinity champions that have a slow on a relatively low cooldown. And so this would be, you could use one of these champions for this job. Just be aware that obviously Yukari as an attack-based damage dealer is a little bit squishy. And then Vizix, her slow is also her ally protect. So she's endangering herself. So you're going to need some additional support here for Vizix, like revives or strengthens or shields or whatever. So just be aware of that. But I think those are both good free-to-play options. I'm not going to use one of those today. I'm actually going to go with, oh, by the way, Scylla the Drakes is also great. I don't think she's really quite built for this right now, but she's another good option for this. Her slow isn't 100% though. She could be like a backup slow champion, but she's got those heals and that revive, which could be really useful. But I'm actually going to go with Yostrid here. Now, Yostrid brings me almost everything that I need for this fight. She's going to give me increased speed and increased turn meter fill. So that's going to help me get more turns than the boss. She brings a decreased speed, which is going to stop that passive from the boss getting extra turns. She brings a weaken, which means I'm going to do more damage. She even brings heals on the increased turn meter, so that's going to help sustain my team. Yeah, she's almost a perfect champion for this. She is strong affinity here, so I don't have to worry about weak affinity debuffs missing. So yeah, that's great. She's perfect. Now, it's not a bad idea to have 2 decrease speed champions because the boss cleanses his debuffs. So Yostrid's debuffs on a relatively quick turnaround, but I could bring in another slow champion as well. And in this particular case, we have a couple of damage dealers who are the right affinity who also bring slows. So I like Thor, especially with the 5-star soul. If you have Brimstone on him or, another blessing that could give you a lot of value here, that's great. But I'm actually going to go with Royal Guard for a couple of reasons. One is he's more free to play friendly. But the second is that he has a max HP nuke. So that's actually going to benefit, in terms of the damage. We'll kill the boss faster with max HP nukes. And then he does have a slow on his, I think it's his A3. And then actually he also has a decreased defense on his A1. It's not 100% chance, but that would also speed up the amount of damage that we're bringing. Okay, so now I've got my decreased speed champions. So the second most important thing I have to worry about is actually going to be my cleanse. I need a cleanse and maybe a block debuffs buff. So let's look for a block debuffs buff. And I would love it to also be a champion who cleanses. So positive effects. remove debuffs. So I have 7 options here. Sanguinea is actually a great option, especially for this affinity. Her skills, like her block debuffs and her cleanse, are on different abilities, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's fine. Her cooldowns are low enough. I think she would work okay, especially if you have a nice blessing on her, because the more stars that you have on her, the more stats you're going to have on her, right? So be aware of that. But in this particular case, we have a couple of other options. I really like Elva. I think she's a great choice here. She's going to give me heals, another increased speed, cleanse, block debuffs, and a revive. I don't have a reviver yet, so we could certainly use her. We could go with somebody like, I was going to say Yoshrid again. This is Freya. Freya gives us shields. That would give us additional survivability. Plus she has turn meter fill, which would give us more heals on Yoshrid's passive. So that's actually not bad. I could use her. Certainly Cardiel would work. He's the champion I normally use. Pythion's also awesome at this. And be aware that, like, we don't necessarily want to bring in a ton of non-magic affinity champions here, right? But it's not critically important if we kill the boss fast enough. Because basically, when we bring in non-magic affinity champions, that just ramps up the growth factor more. But if the boss only takes a few turns, we don't really care about the growth factor that much. So certainly, I think Pythion's probably the best of all of these champions. Gives us heals, cleanse, block debuffs, and an AoE revive. But I think I'm going to go with Elva just for now. Okay. So now we need another damage dealer, and we probably need some sturdiness here. We need some good buffs. So I think probably in terms of buffs, a really good champion to bring in would be Mithrala. She's really nice. She gives us a lot. And I'm wondering if, with Mithrala and then these 2 healing options, do we have enough healing? Probably. Plus we get the poisons. Plus my Mithrala has a brimstone, which is really nice. But let's go maybe a little bit more free to play friendly. Mithrala's free, but let's go maybe a little bit earlier game. I don't know. And let's go with another healer. Let's bring in Rector Drath. Now Rector Drath has a decreased attack on her A1, which is very helpful. It's nice to have a champion with decreased attack. Hers is not that reliable. I don't even actually know if she has enough accuracy, but she also brings in the Perfect Veil, which is going to give us some damage mitigation, the continuous heals, the heals, and another revive. It's not a bad idea to have 2 revivers. Like if Elva goes down, Rector Drath could bring her back and vice versa. Again, this could be Scylla of the Drakes here. In this particular case, that wouldn't be bad. But I thought I'd go for this champion. And then let's get a second damage dealer in here. We want a hard-hitting champion. Let's go and bring in another max HP nuker. This time we'll go with a Cold Heart. Let's just do that. Cold Heart's good for every affinity. And max HP nukes are just strong. So the increased attack will also benefit her. Damage. This should be good. This should be good if none of these champions are built too squishy. This should be good. Let's go ahead and let this fly. Now be aware that Yoshrid is going to fill the boss's turn meter on those buffs, but then she's going to go ahead and place the decreased speed. So that very first time the boss's turn meter got filled, but then we shouldn't have to worry about it. The boss will be cleansing those debuffs. Their boss cleansed the debuffs. And so we need to get that decreased speed back out there relatively quickly, or we're going to get more. Yeah, we just filled the boss's turn meter a ton, but there's the decreased speed. That's why Yoshrid is so good. She gets back to that skill so quickly. Can't really see the Royal Guard here, but he also has that ability as a backup. There's the second cleanse. The boss will cleanse 3 times, 80%, 60%, 40%. And then remember, below 40%, he stops using his A2 and A3. He just uses his A1 and his A4 and his passive. I haven't seen the decreased defense get out there from Royal Guard, but that's probably slowing things down a little bit. If you had a more reliable decrease defense champion, that would be good. All right, our nukers both died. Now they both got revived. There's the decreased defense. That's going to be helpful if we can get the weaken out. And the slow. Everybody died again. This is why we want those double revivers and all those healers. Okay, Royal Guard is up. Decreased defense is there. once we get the weaken on, I think the next hit probably kills the boss. The next nuke from Royal Guard. If he's alive. Oh, he died. We gotta revive him again. Now we got Cold Heart back. Okay, that was the nuke. And now it's just Cold Heart's turn. Not super clean. Not super clean. But it worked. That's why you have, you know, these revivers and healers. You want to get back to, you know, you want to get your nukers back up and doing damage. Let's try one more team. Maybe that could be a little bit cleaner here. Let's bring in Pythion. And let's bring in Ninja. He was a free champion for a while. He does really good damage. He's got that HP burn activation. And then let's go ahead and bring in, let's say, Mithrala. And then let's make the Royal Guard the lead. So still decently free-to-play friendly, right? I know Pythion's, I mean, he was a fusion champion a long, long time ago. A little bit harder to get now. And same, Ninja's no longer free, but Mithrala's still free, and these were free champions. They were all free champions. Actually, 3 fusions. Or, I'm sorry, 2 fusions, a login, a permanent reward, and an epic. So, yeah, a little bit less free-to-play friendly than the last one, but still decent. Let's see if this works a little bit better. Hopefully, we'll do more damage with Ninja. And again, if we kill the boss faster, then the boss doesn't use that growth factor as frequently, and so it's not going to hit as hard. And again, you can see all of the stacks of the whatever that debuff is called. I'm forgetting what it's called right now, but it's a lot of stacks. The stacks grow quickly, so that's not really something you can control. You can't cleanse them. When you take turns, they count down, which is nice, you know, so that's good. So the faster you go, the better off you are. But what is that debuff called again? Iron Brand. That Iron Brand debuff. Oh, and the Brimstone's really nice for Mithrala. That's going to help kill the boss a little bit faster as well. You can see nobody's died here. And we're doing a lot of damage. Decreased defense. Oh, yeah, Ninja's also got a decreased defense on his A1, which may speed things up a little bit. So there we go. 1 minute and 8 seconds. Nobody died that time, so it was faster and cleaner. So there you have it. A couple of different teams for you to consider. Again, don't worry so much about the champions that I have, but remember those roles. That decreased speed is critically important. You also want that cleanse and that block debuffs, and you need a lot of heals or a lot of sustainability. Could be shields. Doesn't have to be healed, so you could certainly use somebody like Wixwell. You could use somebody like Mithrala, you know, to give a little bit more backbone, some sturdiness to your team. But it's really important to have a reviver, I found, unless you just go all out nukes. That's also possible, you know, like if you just have like a Mithrala and 4 newts or something, that might work just fine. But be aware, you know, that for most of us, that's not really accessible. And again, if there's, you know, if you're a little bit worried about like putting together a team, first of all, you can use the Hell Hades Optimizer to get team ideas. You can also come here to Teams of the Week and get some ideas here. Yeah, you're seeing triple newts, quadruple newts. This is silly, right? So yeah, not too many ideas here. Maybe 1 or 2 ideas of champions you could bring in. Certainly Lydia would work. Gives you the increased speed, gives you a weaken and a decreased defense, and a strengthen buff, which would help you with survivability. So there are some other free-to-play options out there as well. I hope this has helped you out. Let me know in the comments below. First of all, did this clarify this fight for you at all? And second of all, if you have a really good free-to-play friendly team composition, please share that in the comments so that other people can check it out and maybe they can reproduce that on their accounts and successfully take down Stage 15. Thanks so much for hanging out today. I have been Colred. I will see you in another video soon.